Hey guys, Tammy here. And in this video, I'm going to talk about the concept of let go and let God. I think that this is a concept that we kind of know in our day to day life a lot of times, especially, if you're Christian or was raised in a Christian environment like I was. We kind of hear that phrase tossed around a lot, but I think it can be really applicable in the custody situation because there's so many things in this situation that are just out of our control. And it can be so frustrating and it can make you feel like everybody's in control of your life but you. At the same time, you do have to let go to a certain point because you don't want to let that frustration continue to build in you because then you're going to get reactive and then you're going to sabotage yourself, right? So there's a balance to this. Let me just remind you, if you like this content, don't forget to hit like on this video and also subscribe to the channel so that you get notified as new videos are released. And as always, please feel free to share on social media. Now, when I say let go and let God, what I kind of mean by that is let things unfold naturally. And I find so many times in co-parenting situations, we're really trying to push our agenda. We're trying to control the outcome. We're trying to get the other parent to do what we want them to do. We're trying to influence the judge or the expert to make the decision that we want them to make. And many times when you're doing that kind of thing and you're trying to push that agenda and control it, it's stressful, right? It's like trying to make something happen. Let me make this thing happen. If I just submit the right evidence or I use the right words or I do the right thing, then everybody's going to see what's going on and I'll get the outcome that I want. Right? So we're trying to make something happen. It's a form of controlling the situation, right? Or trying to control, I should say. It doesn't necessarily work, but it makes us feel like we're doing something to try to control the situation. Honestly, I will tell you that the vast majority of the time, what I find to be true in life and in child custody situations is that if you let go and you just let things unfold naturally and you surrender it to God or whatever your higher power is, but you surrender it and say, you know what, it's not meant for me to do this thing right now. It's not meant for me to have this outcome right now. It's not meant for me to, I'm running 5 minutes late getting out the door. Well, maybe there was a reason for that and I wasn't supposed to be on the road 5 minutes earlier, right? Those types of things, I think in our day-to-day life, we can relate to most of the time a little bit more than applying this in a custody situation. But I find that the same thing happens. So when we're frustrated with the other parent because they're not complying or they're doing all these things, what we tend to want to do is to give our perspective and to try to influence the judge or the experts or change the other parent's mind or get the outcome we're looking for or whatever it is. And if you can just step back and let things play out, most of the time they will come to a resolution. Now, not always. And sometimes that resolution does involve you maybe letting go of something not being as exact as the way that you wanted it to be. I recently had a client who's going to be out of town for a few days, okay? And they were trying to arrange with the other parent. And, there's no right of first refusal or anything like that in place. I mean, when I talk about these things, you always have to check your court orders and not assume that your situation is the same as this. But this person was going to be out of town for a few days. And it's like, okay, I'm going to check with the other parent. Hey, can you, I'm going to be out of town for a few days. Can you cover these days? And it's like, oh yeah, sure. And then they tried to shore up the details a little more. And then it was like, oh wait, no, I can't help you. And, and then it was like, what? And then what happened is you want to try to your tendency is to engage in the argument at that point, because you're like, well, you just said you would do it, and now you're saying no. Why did you say yes in the first place? Why are you changing your mind? That's all the kind of things that we start to engage in. And especially when we're dealing with a narcissistic person, this is the type of stuff that happens, right? Because it's that total constant manipulation. So when we're trying to navigate these things, like I said, we tend to want to come back with all the questions and why you're doing this. And I thought we had this worked out and whatever. Sometimes you have to just go, okay, you know what? They're not going to cooperate. I need to have a backup plan. I need to cover this on my end. And then if they end up doing it and it works out, fine. But if not, I've got myself covered. Because I find that almost every time you put yourself in a situation where you're reliant on, especially a high conflict or narcissistic person, to follow through on something, even with the children, a lot of times they won't. A lot of times they will pull the rug out from under you at the very last minute, because that desire to make you suffer overrides doing the right thing for the children a lot of times, unfortunately. But as these types of situations come up and you deal with this over and over, when you can calmly just not react and let it, like I said, unfold naturally, I find one of two things will usually happen. Either number one, they will stop doing that or it will get less frequent because they're not getting the sort of emotional satisfaction out of manipulating you in that way, because you're not reacting or anything. You're just solving the problem on your own end. If you have to offer them a right of first refusal, but they often switch their mind on you, then just always know that you need a backup in place in case, they fail or whatever it is. And if that isn't the case, that they stop, then usually what happens is this pattern will continue for a while. And, one of the things I say to people is, don't rush right out and file something as soon as one thing happens. People tend to show all their cards, so to speak, and let the other person know that, oh, I don't like this, I'm tracking this, or I'm arguing with you about this or whatever. And I'm like, have a little more of a poker face, play things close to the chest. Don't let the other person know everything that you're looking at or following or whatever. And so if you're engaging in these conversations about getting help with something or something like that, and they don't cooperate, and then a month later, you're like, okay, we need to get the kid into therapist, and then it's crickets for 2 weeks. And then you're like, hey, following up on this, here's 3 therapist names I found. You don't get a response. Okay, I'm going to make the appointment for the child. The appointment's in 2 weeks. If you have any disagreement on that, let me know. Okay. And that's usually kind of the steps I will go through for that type of issue. A lot of times then at that point, they're like, oh, no, I don't agree. Right. That's as soon as you say there's an appointment, then usually you will hear from them. And then you try to re-engage in the conversation. Okay, you don't agree. What's the reason? Does that date not work for you? Do I need to reschedule? Would you prefer one of the other 2 names that I sent you for a provider? Whatever. You continue to just kind of slowly, patiently box them in on various issues. And when you can show a pattern of that over a course of 6 months or something like that, then it starts giving you more leverage in front of the court on the various custody issues, right? Because then you're able to show the lack of cooperation from the other parent. But in the first instance, it's so hard to kind of let go of that control and just let whatever happens. It can be really frustrating. Sometimes you're having to rearrange your life and you feel like you're running around rearranging chairs on the deck of the Titanic, right? Because it's just insanity all the time. But you have to live through a period of that and just let go and not let it make you crazy and say, you know what? Okay, I know in the long run, this is going to work in my favor and this is going to be something that I can use in court. But in the first instance, you have to have that little bit of patience and let things unfold naturally. If you find this content helpful and you'd like to learn more about my coaching services, you can go to divorceuniversityonline.com/VIP-coaching. There's a link on that page where you can book a time to speak to a member of my staff, learn more about my services, and how I might be able to support you on this journey. See you guys next time.